We're talking about is the American colonies, the struggle for independence. We've talked about moving towards independence and all the factors that have us in a poor relationship with Great Britain. The struggle for independence is going to be where we have bloodshed now, which is going to lead us to a revolutionary war. And the end of this test material will be us formally signing a Declaration of Independence. Once we do that, then we are going to prepare ourselves for what we know as the Revolutionary War. So these are basically struggles for independence. And the first subtopic under that is the beginning of conflict. Now we got to kind of go back a little bit. Is there conflict between the colonists and Great Britain? No question about it. And in the last thing of the Suffolk Resolves, what did they suggest that each colony do? Anybody remember that?
Form a militia.
Form a militia and arm your citizens. Okay? Well, basically what happened here is General Thomas Gage was getting a little bit concerned about the colonists' attitude towards the colonies. And so he wanted to find out if some of these rumors that he was hearing were true about the colonists and the rebellion, and maybe the fact that they were beginning to arm themselves. So what he did is he took a British spy by the name of John Howe, who's on your ID sheet, and he asked him to go around the colonies, especially and only Massachusetts, to find out if these rumors of rebellion and possible arming of the colonists in Massachusetts were true. Now this would not be a difficult thing for John Howe. He's a private in the British Army, but what's he doing in America? Spying, which means what do most American colonists think he is? What? No, what do they think he is? They think he's a colonist, right? He's been roaming around like everybody else. He had been stationed in Boston long enough, not wearing any military uniform, that as far as these British American colonists believe, he's just part of Massachusetts. They have no idea that he's a private in the British Army and he's spying on them. Well, General Gage also heard another rumor he was very concerned about. He heard that the colonists in Massachusetts were starting to stockpile gunpowder and arms and ammunition. What does stockpile mean, Danny? I bet your dad stockpiles ammunition. What's stockpile mean? How do you, tell me, somebody, come on. This is AP US history. What's stockpile mean? That's absolutely. Stockpiling means collecting large reserves of. Okay, so British General Thomas Gage, who's the governor, right, of Massachusetts, he's hearing rumors that the colonists in Massachusetts are stockpiling or collecting large amount of gunpowder, arms, and ammunition. What's he afraid they're going to do with that? Well, turn it upon the British and start a revolution. He doesn't know if it's true, so who does he send out to find out if it's true? John Howe. So John Howe is a spy of the British Army. As far as the colonists in Massachusetts know, he's just an everyday normal colonist. He had been stationed in Boston long enough to fit in. He's going to serve as the perfect spy for British General Thomas Gage. And Gage had heard rumors that the colonists in Massachusetts were stockpiling all kinds of gunpowder and ammunition and such. Kiddos, listen to me. Every day I'm not coming out here and asking you to be quiet so I can run a class. Okay? So please do your thing, but let's be nice and quiet. Can we do that? Okay? So anyway, he sends John Howe out to take care of this. Well, he's walking towards Lexington, and he walks by a farmhouse in Lexington, and he sees this elderly man on his porch of his home cleaning his gun. And when Howe asked the man what he was intending to shoot, the man's reply was, "A flock of redcoats in Boston." Okay? So again, John Howe's out trying to get the feel of what the colonists are thinking. He's also in the back of his mind looking for what, Mr. Wolf? What's he looking for?
People are gone.
Well, he's looking for that, but what else is he looking for that Gage is concerned about, Aisha?
Proof of
What's that?
proof of the rebellion?
Well, what else is he looking for? He's looking, well, not militia, but what's he looking for? What's he heard rumor of? Come on, let's wake up today a little. Yeah, he's looking for the stockpile of ammunition and rifles and gunpowder. So he walks by this farmhouse and he stops to talk to an elderly gentleman who was cleaning his gun on the porch, and he asked him what he was intending to shoot, and the man's reply was what? A flock of redcoats at Boston. So Private Howe is hearing this everywhere he goes. He's hearing these people making comments about how they're bringing up arms against the British and what their intentions are. And these American colonists refer to themselves as what? What do they refer to themselves as? Patriots. What do the British refer to them as? Rebels. They've gone from, loyalists are different, right? Loyalists are people in the colonies loyal to Great Britain. Great Britain has labeled these people that are against the king as rebels. So rebels doesn't come up way until the Civil War. Rebels comes up prior to the Revolutionary War. So again, Private Howe is hearing the same type of stories everywhere he goes. He witnesses many rebellious colonists, and while these American colonists refer to themselves as patriots, the British begin to call them rebels. So Private Howe's walking around, he's seeing these pamphlets and advertisements we've talked about, posting rebellion against the king. He's watching loyalists being tarred and feathered, right? He's seeing these homes of loyalists damaged or destroyed or even burned. And he figures out, I think these colonists are ready to fight. Now they're arming themselves. Well, he even discovers where the stockpile of gunpowder, rifles, and ammunition are, and they are located at nearby Concord. Have you ever heard of the Battle of Lexington and Concord? Anybody ever heard of that? Nobody in here has heard of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Nobody? Yeah, that's kind of where we're heading here. Okay. So, what does Private Howe do when he goes all around the countryside, the Lexington, Concord area? He's hearing all this rebellious talk, and he actually discovers that they are indeed stockpiling gunpowder, rifles, and ammunition. So what does he do? What's he do? What? He goes back and tells General Gage of what he's seen. And after hearing Private Howe's report, General Gage decides the time has come that we take action against these American rebels. So again, when General Gage hears Private Howe's report, he decides it's time to take action against the American rebels. So what's the first thing he's going to do? What's the first thing he's got to do? No? Oh no, he didn't. Yeah, very good, Jordan. He's got to go capture this stockpile of gunpowder, rifles, and ammunition. And he knows that's in Concord. Now what comes first? Boston, then what, then what? Are the three we talked about. Boston, then Lexington, then Concord. Okay, that's the route. So he knows he has to do that. Second thing he's going to do is he's going to try to kidnap or capture two of the most important members of the Massachusetts legislature who are located in Lexington. One of those you've heard about was Samuel Adams, and the other one you're going to hear about, a guy by the name of John Hancock. What's he best known for?
His signature.
His signature on the Declaration of Independence, which is very large, so the king could read it without his spectacles. Okay? So, Gage has kind of a two-part plan after he hears the report from Howe. First of all, he's going to seize those colonial supplies of gunpowder, ammunition, and weapons that the Patriots had been stockpiling at Concord. But first he's going to go to Lexington and capture, basically kidnap, two of the more influential members of the Massachusetts legislature, Samuel Adams and John Hancock. That's where they're hiding. And it's his mission to find them and arrest them. Everybody follow me so far? So on April 18th of 1775, on April 18th of 1775, under the cover of darkness, 700 British troops leave their quarters in Boston. And where are they first heading, Luke Mortimer? Where are they marching to? Lexington, to try to capture Adams and Hancock. Then they're going to go from Lexington to where, Daniel?
To Concord.
To do what?
To get the ammo.
To seize the ammunition, rifles, and gunpowder. That's their mission. So on April 18th of 1775, under the cover of darkness, 700 British troops are going to leave their quarters in Boston. They are first going to march to Lexington in search of Adams and Hancock. Then they're going to go to Concord to seize the rebel stockpile of gunpowder, ammunition, and rifles. And that takes us to our next subtopic, which is on to Concord. What we're going to do early in this subtopic is introduce you to a very interesting individual. We're going to introduce you to him, and then you'll get a real kick out of what happens later with this man. Okay? So, on to Concord. So, as the British soldiers are marching from Boston towards Concord, the first little town they come through is Metonymy. Metonymy. So as the British soldiers are marching from Boston, eventually to Concord, the first little town they come through is Metonymy. And they pass through the town of Metonymy, and they march right past the farmhouse of 78-year-old Samuel Whitmore. So the British soldiers leave Boston, they head towards Concord. The first town they come through is the town of Metonymy. And after they pass through the town of Metonymy, the soldiers march right past the farmhouse of 78-year-old Samuel Whitmore. 78 years old. Whitmore had served in the British Army for 5 decades. 5 decades. How many years is that, kiddos? 50 years. Served in the British military for 50 years. What major conflict do you think he fought in during those 50 years? Let's see if we're on it today. French and Indian War. Okay, so he was a veteran of the French and Indian War and served the country of Great Britain in their military for 50 years. But I'm telling you right now, he doesn't see eye to eye with the British in 1775. He's very frustrated. What's that? He's 78, yeah. He doesn't see eye to eye with the British. Even though he was a loyal soldier for 50 years, in 1775 he's not seeing eye to eye with the British. He doesn't like Britain's policies in Massachusetts. Okay? Doesn't like Britain's policies in Massachusetts. He doesn't like Great Britain's heavy-handed tactics. He doesn't like British policies in Massachusetts. He doesn't like Great Britain's heavy-handed tactics. What's that mean if you're heavy-handed, Regan? Stern. Okay? You're a basketball player, Coach Abel. If he was a heavy-handed coach, what would that mean? Strict. Strict, hardcore. Doesn't care about your feelings much. I'm not saying that's the case, I'm just making a point. Expects you to work and doesn't expect any excuses. He's hard on you. Okay? Heavy-handed, someone that's really hard on you. Doesn't give you a lot of say. And finally, the thing he's most angry about is those 8,000 soldiers in Boston. He thinks the military presence in Boston is ridiculous. Remember, there's only 14 to 15,000 people living in Boston and 8,000 soldiers, so he hates the military presence in Boston. So he opposes Britain's policies in Massachusetts. He despises their heavy-handed tactics against the colonists, and he thinks that the military presence is uncalled for. Okay? So as the British soldiers pass by his home, he keeps a really close eye on them, waiting for their return. And we'll tell you what happens then later in the lecture, because they're going to return back, and he's going to have a surprise. Okay? Meanwhile, knowing the British are marching from Boston, who is preparing the British advance to Lexington, and who is preparing for the British advance to Lexington and Concord by organizing the Massachusetts militia? Who is doing that? Because this individual knows they're now on the march. And he knows they're going to go, I don't think he knows so much they're going to try to capture Adams and Hancock, but he knows darn sure they're going to go to Concord and try to seize that arsenal, so to speak. Who's that man that's preparing the militia?
Paul Revere.
No? No, who's our man? Who's our man that's done everything? Who's the founding father, Dr. Joseph Warren. He's busy back preparing for the British advance to Lexington and Concord. He's organizing the Massachusetts militia. Now, I just want you to kind of listen for a while and not write anything down, because you should already know this. Okay? So, at this point in history, the legend begins. Patriot spies on the west bank of the Charles River react when they sight British troops across the river. They quickly signal the Old North Church in Boston as men there flicker 2 lanterns, meaning the redcoats were marching towards Lexington. Shortly afterwards, Dr. Warren sends Paul Revere into the night shouting,
The British are
"The
coming!"
British are coming! The British are coming!" In reality, Paul Revere would have never shouted anything. Why?
Well, he's warning the British.
What's that?
He'd be warning the British that they need.
Absolutely. He's on a secret mission here, right? He's trying to get to Lexington and warn them, and then to Concord. He's not going to be yelling top of his lungs, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" Because if the British sentries that are posted all along the route see him, what are they going to do? Arrest him. I don't think they'll shoot him, but they'll arrest him. So that's so false, it's unreal. You know another reason he wouldn't yell, "The British are coming, the British are coming"? Anybody? Because he's British. Everybody's British in the colonies. They're British Americans. That would make no sense. So somebody tried to justify that he yelled, "The regulars are coming, the regulars are coming," meaning the British Army, which he didn't do either, because he's not going to give away his position. So the story continues. He continues his midnight ride and warns both John Hancock and Samuel Adams in Lexington, then rides to Concord and warns the Patriots about the British advance, and they're able to hold on to their arsenal at Concord. How many people have heard that story in elementary school? You all have had. It's been pounded in your head forever. Isn't that kind of the story you've heard? Well, the reason you heard that, and you can write this down, is this whole fictional story was developed by a poet by the name of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Anybody ever heard of him? And he wrote a poem called Paul Revere's Ride. You know when he wrote this poem? 85 years after this happened. Just prior to the Civil War, to spur on Union troops to fight hard in the Civil War. The whole thing is what? Exaggerated. And this is what, I'll bet every one of you kids in elementary must have heard that poem, didn't you? This embellishment of Paul Revere's Ride has been pounded into elementary school students for the last 150 years. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive. Who remembers that famous day and year? He said to his friend, "If the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the Old North Church as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea. and I on the opposite shore will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. And it goes on and on and on. That was developed 85 years after that, and that's what people think is American history. Let me tell you the true story, okay? American history proves that 2 men made that historic ride of April 18, 1775. Paul Revere certainly was one of them, but William Dawes Jr. was the other. And you know what? Neither one of these 2 guys made it to Concord. Neither one. Okay? So American history proves that 2 men made that historic ride to Lexington on April 18, 1775. Yes, it was Paul Revere, but he was joined by William Dawes Jr. Who sent both those men? Dr. Joseph Warren. And they went in opposite directions. And they were to relay to the people of Lexington and Concord that British troops were on the move. They were to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock that they were going to be captured. Then go on to Concord and warn the militia there that the British redcoats were indeed marching to seize that arsenal. That part is true. But they went in opposite directions. Why would they do that? That's a great answer, and everybody thinks that, so that everybody gets told. It's a straight line, pretty much, right? They thought one of them might be caught, so if they go in separate directions, maybe one of them would get there. So, what Paul Revere does is he rows across the Charles River, okay?